This is more like it blowing a gale and it started to rain. So we're starting today's little adventure at the Rivelin Dam. This is the lower Rivelin reservoir, and we're going to be heading down the valley. It's about 4 or 5 miles down into Sheffield. This wind is bonkers. So I was watching a video yesterday from my old pal Stephen Reed, where he headed off on a little adventure using a map from around 200 years ago. I thought to myself, why not have a wander down the Rivlin Valley, which is steeped in history, using a 200-year-old map? Because I know at one time there was in this short section, I think it's only around 4 miles, there was 20 mills and 21 dams. So we're going to see what we can find today from the old remnants from historical days gone by in Sheffield. So according to the historical map, this is the old dam house, which is there, as well as the overflow for the dam. Should be able to see that a little bit better from here. So the dam house isn't actually shown on the modern OS map, so the old historical maps give you a lot more information about, you know, old buildings like this and ruins. Gonna have to do a little bit of walking down the road. Joe dropped me off and I've got to walk home, and on the way here I noticed that the footpath was closed further up, so bit of road walking. There's a lot more information on these old maps as well. So MP, I believe, is marker post, which could do with a lick of paint. Sheffield 5 miles. Welcome to autumn. So I've got no affiliation to the Hiker app. Bought it and paid for it for my own money. It is really good. So on the old historical map it says Reservoir Sheffield CWW, which is the Sheffield Corporation Waterworks. As you can see from the map, it's all a beige colour, so it's hard to make out sometimes what is what. So it's really easy just to switch between maps. So I'm going to switch to the OS maps now. So now it says water treatment works, but you can see where the river is better. You can see where, you know, the dams are and the weirs. When it comes to water and open access land, the OS maps has got a lot more detail, and the colours help distinguish where you are. But the historical maps have information on that OS maps doesn't. When I was a kid, this would be a proper find. Unfortunately, we live in a world now where your kids can't play conkers at school. We're almost back following the river, but this is the old post office house. Now this was opened in 1886, and I believe it was still as a post office in some capacity till around 2006. Lovely old house now though, isn't it? Hiding beneath those leaves is Rivelin Bridge. So just along here is where the first mill was built along the valley. So this is Rivelin Bridge Dam, and the dams were built alongside the river. So the river's down below there, and a little bit further along there would have been a mill with, well, this particular one was a corn mill built around 1700, and it had 2 water wheels that were powered by water dropping from the dam. The old mill buildings would have been around here somewhere. There are some bits of wall there. I don't know if that's from an old building. Always pays to fact check. I think I said 1700, didn't I? Corn mill stood here from 1632 or before until the 1920s. It was owned by the Duke of Norfolk. Let's ramp it up a level. This bit of the walk is stunning. I love coming around here. Just look at that old bridge. Especially when we've got, you know, a huge canopy of trees, although we are starting to see leaves fall now. Just have a look down there. And the kingfisher. Oh, the camera's not picked that up, but it's not very often you see kingfishers. Stunning. Made my day, that. You can see these little channels alongside the river. I think these were used just to feed water into the dams. This dam currently doesn't have any water in it. But you can see here where the water would funnel down, and then there would be a water wheel here. This is the upper coppice wheel. So the mill, which would have been here, was built in 1736 and was used for grinding cutlery. Here we go. And a little bit of information about it. Yeah, 1736. Duke of Norfolk again. He had a few quid, didn't he? The water would come through here, power belts to grind the cutlery, and then come back, drop down here somewhere. I bet it was hard work back in the day, but beautiful around here. I don't know if this would have looked so pretty when it was an industrial area. This is where the second coppice wheel would have been. A little bit further down we'll be able to see more substantial evidence of days gone by. So there used to be a bridge here that you could walk across. Just down there you can see the remains of some spikes in the rocks. You can walk all the way along there. So we've reached another dam, so there should be another wheel location along here. The third coppice wheel. The historical map says that this was a paper mill. So let's go and have a look. So the dam's up there and the Rivelin's down there. So that's probably about 20-foot drop. It looks like somewhere around here is where the water would have come back and rejoined the river. First real sign of a building. There we go, look. Sheffield is renowned for its steel and especially its cutlery. But so far we've had a corn mill, we have had a cutlery grinding mill, and now a paper mill. It's hard to believe that this tiny little river has had such an impact already on the Industrial Revolution around the 1700s. Might not look a powerhouse, but it certainly was back in the day. Here's another example of where the historical maps come in handy. The OS maps don't show this, but the historical one tells you it's an aqueduct. So, not sure where it was taking water to or from. Interesting all the same. So we've got a man-made weir and another one of those little side channels. It's like walking down a, I don't know, it's like being on a bridge with water either side of you. Gorgeous. So this whole area, according to the historical map, there was an old building here. So this has been the Frank paper mill. There's no indication at all of a building here on the OS maps. Looks like there's something over here though. Here we are. Oh, breaking my neck. Very cool. Looks like there's a bit of a well here. Not sure what that was used for, but very cool. Sometimes you've got to get off the beaten track, haven't you? This is quite a large cleared area. I'm assuming this was one of the bigger mills. So I've just had a look, and the Wolf Wheel, or the Wolf Wheel Dam, is the largest in the Rivlin Valley. The mill was used for grinding cutlery and razor blades apparently. Built around 1720, now a bit of a haven for wildlife. In fact, there's a lovely looking bird over there. I forget what they're called. If I remember, I'll put it on the screen. I could sit and watch those raindrops dancing all day. Synchronised swimming. So I'll switch back to the OS map, and I'm not sure, but I think FB is footbridge, which it also says on the historical map. But that also says that there are fords here, which means that at one time you'd have been able to travel across the river here and maybe up towards Manchester Road there. I don't know whether horse and cart or whatever it would be would go up there. If you zoom in, you can actually see where the track crossed the river. That's either been dug out or washed away with erosion, but can you see those like slabs over there? That'll have been where the track used to go up to cross the river and over to the Wolf Wheel. Another one of those fabulous stone footbridges. There's an old reclaimed millstone or grinding wheel. These wheels had a big wooden shaft through them, somehow connected to the the water wheel through belts and things like that, and then this would be spinning round and be using this abrasive edge to sharpen your cutlery, knives and what have you. Not a lot to see with this one. If I didn't have the old map with me, I wouldn't think twice about walking past this. Well, let's take a closer look. The old map says there was a ford here crossing the river for a trail up there, and you might not be able to see. Let me zoom in. The camera isn't picking it up very well, but there's like two walls about 20 foot apart, and you can see the ramp getting out of the water made of all these rocks, and the same over on the other side there. So these will have been for transporting materials to and from the mills. You can see the old walls better from here, and there's like three little stumps there just blocking the end of the road where it's been blocked off at some point. There they are, look. If I brought my wellies, I'd go and have a look. You must have been asked that question before. If you could either travel forward in time or backwards in time, which would you do? Well, going forward doesn't look a pretty place to me. I'd love to go back and see what this sort of thing was like. This would have been a thriving, busy industrial area. I wouldn't want to work there, don't get me wrong, but it'd be fascinating to see how they did things back in the day with pretty limited technology. The power of the little river. These are handy little things. Built in 1737, the Plonk wheel, also known as Bobby wheel, Sawbridge mill and Siddall wheel. It was used for cutlery grinding, and by 1852 the wheel was abandoned. I'm getting ready for a cuppa and a dunk. Should be quite easy to find somewhere pretty to sit down. Look how big these reeds are. It's another big dam. This seems to be on more of a level with the river. All the others seem 15-20 foot higher. Although the river does run a little bit lower as we get round the corner. I only walked about 30 yards and the drop off just round the corner is huge. More cutlery. The Hind wheel. Water wheels have worked here since 1581. By the 1820s there were 2 water wheels, each driving 6 grinding wheels. Bent over these wheels, men ground cutlery into shape. And they were still doing that till the 1920s. So this is when you sort of realise how powerful water is. Even though it feels like a little stream, when it's concentrated into a drop off like that, it's quite powerful stuff. Bit slippy there. So this is the old site of the upper cut wheel. So as you can see, there's a lot more evidence of where buildings were anyway. A lot of brickwork there. Not sure what that is. So this was built in 1749. It was used for Again, cutlery grinding. Trying to imagine exactly where the wheel was, whether it was a big wheel here and feeding something into the building here, and then the water passes back down through the tunnel and back into the Rivelin. So most of the other dams have been the other side of the river. Let's have a look at this one. So this doesn't look huge at all. There's like that little channel coming down here, and then there's just a small dam here. And just a small drop. Let's try not to get run over. The map says this is New Wheel. There's the mill dam. This looks a decent spot for a cuppa, I think. So the sign says Nether Cut Wheel, but it's sometimes called New Wheel because it was the last water-powered wheel-powered mill in the valley. This mill had a bit of controversy about it. It suffered from something called rattening, which is it's where the mill was attacked and had its tools taken away, essential things like grinding stones and things like that, and dressing tools, because they got caught out using non-union labour, and if you weren't in the union you didn't work in them days. So the unions were very powerful back in them days. I've had a lot of suggestions for today's Dunking Delight, Jammy Dodgers. So we've got Chris Mason says Jammy Dodger, Mutant Lego says him and his mates had a Biscuits Olympics back in the 90s, and Jammy Dodgers, believe it or not, were the winners. And also thanks to Anne Wood and George Taylor. So I'm not going to lie, I have had Jammy Dodgers loads of times, but I don't ever recall dunking them. I say it every time. Is it just me, or are these getting smaller? I've seen that you get different flavours in them as well. You've got to stick to the old school raspberry ones, haven't you? Let's crack on with it. Double dunk for about 5 seconds in total. It's a bit weird. I don't know if that's the coffee, because everyone tells me that coffee is not used for dunking. You need to use tea, but I'm a coffee drinker, so I've got to stick to what I know, haven't I? It's alright. I'm not sure where it's going on the league table. So this is the 7th biscuit I've done, so it's hard to remember where they are, and I forgot to put the table up last week. But for me, I'm going to put that bottom. Sorry, I do like a Jammy Dodger. I love Jammy Dodgers, but not dunked in my coffee. I'll give it a second go just to try, but I don't think I'm going to change my mind. No, dunking adds nothing to it. So here's the current league table. If you can suggest anything else that you think can break into the Champions League spots, let me know in the comments below. It was supposed to be chucking it down all day, so I put some waterproof shoes on. It's the first time I've had barefoot shoes on in quite a while now. And my heels are killing. I've only done about 3 miles, something like that. And I probably got away with my trail runners. How pretty does that look in this like blanket of green? You've got these gorgeous colours of the leaves. This is what's left of the home head wheel. So this was built around 1742, I think it was, and was abandoned around 1936. But apparently it was still in good condition then. But you know, what's happened to it now? There's some old wooden beams down there and a few little bits of the brick walls, but you know, why have they dismantled it? It was in good condition. There's a couple of that have been restored, not along this river. I will make another video having a nosy around some of the old working sites. Some things you never get too old for. Till you fall in anyway. I must admit the modern OS maps are much better when it comes to showing the dashed green lines of the footpath. You know, this peachy colour for open access land, and you can see bodies of water better being blue. But you have to think that when these historical maps were made, you know, people didn't have the same access rights. There weren't as many footpaths, there weren't as many trails that you could go and wander along. It's nice that you can have the choice and just, you know, switch between them really easily. And it sorts out all the GPS for you, so makes things really easy. And I'm sure someone will say use a map and compass, and I do know how to use that, but we live in a modern world now where you don't always have to rely on that skill. It's nice to know and can be a saviour when something like this dies, but just for general leisure purposes these are usually fine. I think that this one is where the Roscoe wheel is. There's a lot more remains of the old mill area. You can see the wall going all the way along there. It's right next to this gorgeous old bridge. Would have had gates on it at one time, look. Yep, Roscoe wheel. Again, this was used for grinding, big grinding wheel. So this looks like where the wheel will have been housed. In fact, you can see potentially there. Yeah, definitely where the wheel would have been. And then the water would have escaped under there and back into the river. So I wonder if this old staircase took you to other parts of the mill. Not sure I should be coming underneath this, but looks like it's ready to drop at any time. That is huge. So the river's starting to get a little bit deeper and wider. Probably another half a mile down into Malin Bridge, where it joins up with a Loxley, which then goes down into the River Don, nearer the centre of Sheffield. We've got a couple more of these little mill sites to pass. We've left the most impressive till last, which is the Mousehole Forge. Can you see where it says Parley Borough Union by? So that's a parliamentary borough, and Union, I don't know what the by is. I think it's bound because it marks off the regions where the parliamentary candidates went. So you know, now you might get your local councils, they were originally split up, and those areas were designated by Parliament. But I wonder if the politicians back in those days were as good as they are now. This one's quite nice to see. So somewhere around here were the Havelock steel and wire mills. My granddad was a Havelock, not quite from this neck of the woods though. quite literally. I do. So I don't think there's any sort of connection. The map says it was up here somewhere, although I'm going to be slipping about. Not a lot to see there, is there? So we're almost at the site of the Mousehole Forge. This is where the dam was. It's a bit dry at the moment. Look at the size of these rocks. Huge. So this is part of the old forge buildings. Started out as lead mills back in the early 1600s. Used for smelting. But by 1664 it had been converted into an iron forge used for making huge anvils and vice jaws and things like that. So the forge was still running, I think, till the 1930s. It's since been restored and is a private residence, so you can't go in, but you can see some of the old, well, I will put a picture on. There's a few of the old anvils there, look. And these were award-winning. In fact, they won a gold medal for it. You can see the big oak beam there from the hammer for the forge. I'd love to be able to travel back in time and have a nosy. Let's have a look down here. So you can see all of the structural works there, look. Not sure how this would have worked for water power and what have you. I don't know if we've ticked every one of the mills off. In fact, there's one here, look. The Grogram wheel. You can just see the outlets over there. I hope you agree. It's been a lovely walk, and if you've enjoyed it, do me a favour, hit the thumbs up button. Maybe consider subscribing if you haven't already. But I'm about at the end of the trail. Got to walk home now. Or give the missus a call. I might do the latter. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.